apparently the largest strike by Russia on Ukraine since this thing started. Are we in it 3.5 years at this point? Oh man, time flies. Anyway, 800 drones and 13 missiles fired in Ukraine, most of which, I guess, 500 reportedly shot down, of course, meaning 300 of the drones got in, and a handful of the missiles got shot. It looks like 9 of the missiles made it through and were not intercepted. I guess my first question is, certainly this is not a movement toward resolution. This is increased pressure. Again, it's the largest strike yet. But I guess I'm kind of wondering, just from a military and a strategic standpoint, Daniel, is there any rhyme or reason to what Russia is targeting with these? Because they hit residential neighborhoods. Sometimes they apparently hit one of the Ukraine cabinet ministry building, but that sounds like maybe a legitimate target. But I mean, is this sort of like willy-nilly launching things and just irking and pissing off Ukrainians and making the populace angry? Or what's the story from a military perspective, Daniel?
Yeah, it doesn't appear that way. What you got to understand that what the Ukraine side does, and to an extent you can understand this. All of these anti-aircraft missiles and interceptor missiles that are fired up, if they miss, they're going to come down. And it's been very often throughout this entire war that much of the damage inside residential areas is because either of an interception that succeeded, and sometimes it'll hit like the rocket motor of an incoming missile, will knock it off course, and then, of course, it just falls wherever it falls, or the interceptor missile itself misses, and then will land on a residential building. And when much of the infrastructure that Ukraine has is intentionally placed inside residential areas to make it harder for Russia to do so if they get accused of this stuff internationally. Russia has apparently calculated that they don't really care about what the international is going to say anymore. So if there's military infrastructure inside residential areas, they're just going to go after it. And it could also be that they're attacking some civilian territories impossible. I don't know. There was another one overnight that had 21 retirees killed in an outlying village, and it's hard to see how that was a military target. I don't know. But what we do know is that Russia is saying, listen, we're in this to win it, and we're not backing down any from that. We've made a path open for a negotiated settlement, which is basically capitulation. They say you can either take that, or as Putin expressly said in Beijing last week, we'll keep going until we win it on the battlefield. That's the stark reality.
Well, and on our side of the equation, since at least thank God thus far, we're not planning on putting boots on the ground. I know Zelensky's asking for more Patriot interceptor missiles, which are extraordinarily expensive and finite in quantity, and they tend to be used up rather quickly. That is not going to stop the Russian offensive. I don't think there's any possible way, noting the manufacturing hurdle you have to even get them over there. But what is left? Trump keeps threatening Russia with like additional sanctions or something. I keep asking out loud, when are our options going to run out? And is there really anything left in our arsenal to throw at Russia that's going to get them to come to the table or otherwise soften their position on a negotiation?
No, the options have run out, not are running out, but have run out. We simply don't have them because of all these 17 rounds of previous sanctions that we've done since February 2022. Right. There's nothing left, and Russia has made themselves essentially sanctions proof. Now, there are some things that we could still do which could cause some pain to Russia, but not enough to cause any kind of change in policies. And that's one of the things I emphasize so emphatically here, is that these 17 rounds of sanctions have never succeeded a single time in compelling Russian compliance on any topic. So it is irrational to the highest degree to think that anything next would have a success where the other 18 or 17 have already failed. And now then the one area where we have put something on is on India. So there's a 50% tariff on India alone. And that's what the only thing they are talking is separate is reflexive tariffs on those that do business with Russia, thinking somehow that would cause it. But there's no chance. In fact, India today, I saw in the news, actually says they vowed now not only are they not going to stop buying Russian oil like we wanted, they're going to increase by somewhere between 15 and 50% in the coming number of months. So that's also backfired. And that, of course, helps Russia out as well. So we are faced with this stark situation. We either accede to math, that Ukraine can never, no matter how many missiles they get, they can't overwhelm the number of incoming Russian missiles, which are increasing. And the manpower on the front, by Sersky's own admission yesterday, is a threefold advantage for Russia. You cannot even hold on with those numbers. So we either give in to the acknowledged reality, or we keep with this pretending that we have something to do and just watch Ukraine get ground to dust. That's where we are, Brian. It's that stark.
Wow. And no, you can't look back and say, well, 300, that movie shows that, a few number of men can fight off a massive army. That is not reality in this current situation.
Yeah,
So,
and even in the movie, though, those 300 ended up losing, so that's not a good model either.
Fair enough. I forget. It's a very important element of that. Well, so the really concerning thing for me, moving aside from just this conflict, we've in essence driven the Prime Minister of India, Modi, into the arms of the Russians. I mean, they were a valuable trading partner, and they got 1 billion people. That's a lot of business we can do, and we should be. I don't know. I'm alarmed by that growing relationship between Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and India.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, India has intentionally wanted to have a kind of a hands-off attitude, both the West and the East, because they wanted to kind of straddle it. They said, we want to do business with everybody.
Right.
We don't want to join one bloc against another. And they successfully did that. But now we're shoving them over into that block. And then you're adding, and you just saw it in Beijing last week, where they had their World War II victory celebration. You also added Kim Jong-un to that on the stage. You had the president of Iran that was there, and in addition to a whole bunch of others. But you had all of them happy together. That's not good for us, and that's what our policies are producing. You should be worried about that.
Yeah, it is a huge concern of mine. Well, and then what of the European Union on this? And we've had multiple conversations over coming up in years now, Daniel Davis, but the European Union being in a sense of, or a state of denial. They keep saying, no, we need to fight. We need whatever. Now France's economy is collapsed and their government has collapsed. I don't know where the European Union is at this moment in time relative to the conflict, but they still seem to be emasculated and incapable of doing anything anyway. And you've got the matters compounded by France's economy going into the toilet.
Right, and then you can also add Germany into that same calculation.
Yes.
And then you have Robert Fico and Viktor Orban on the other end saying, "Hey, we just want this war to get over with so we can get back to doing business and stop costing ourselves the inexpensive gas from Russia, et cetera, in the quantities that are needed." So you have fracturing all over the European Union. But the bottom line is that whichever ones are clinging on to let's keep doing something are in absolute, you said it best, denial. There is no path militarily, diplomatically, or economically where they can avoid defeat. And the longer we ignore that, the longer we harm our own interests, not just those of the Ukrainian people who are enabled to fight a war that can only be lost. That is, it's a real problem and something we're going to have to face probably sooner rather than later, or Ukraine will simply lose the war and then we'll be in a much worse situation.
Yeah, and honestly, from my perspective, or my position right now, looking at where we are, they're just on a path to lose the war. As long as Russia's not willing to capitulate on anything, that's it. They're going to continue to do these massive strikes like they did over the weekend. They've obviously got the resources and the manpower to do it. They've got no incentive to stop. I don't know. Daniel Davis.
I hear you. You want to finish that sentence with something that's intelligent. I can't find one either. It's just, why would they go down a path that can only fail? It's a head scratcher.
It truly is. Nobody wants to admit defeat, but clearly they're on the path to defeat. And that's just practical, plain, in-your-face reality, brought to you by, of course, Daniel Davis, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Look for the deep dive where you get your podcasts and follow him, and always tune in on Tuesdays at 8:30 for another, interesting discussion. Even if we can't resolve the problems of the world, Daniel, we try.
We do.
Love you, brother.
Thank you, man. See you
Have
next
a great week, man.